Hey everyone, Emoji Movie Channel here, and I'm here to review another movie. Today I will be talking about the new Dreamworks film, Spirit Untamed. Going in, I had pretty low expectations for this movie. I mean, I didn't really enjoy Dreamworks' recent films, and this just looked cheap and uninteresting. But I mean, it couldn't have been terrible, right? Well, yeah, this movie isn't terrible, but it's still bad. I actually really do like the original Spirit movie. It has a very calm pace and beautiful looking animation. And this movie doesn't. I don't want to say the animation in this looks awful because I actually do like the look of the environments. I think they're really immersive and the only thing in this movie that looks well rendered. The designs of the horses and the character animation on them is pretty good too. Otherwise, this is pretty unimpressive coming from a studio like Dreamworks. The human designs are fine, I guess, but I don't think they really translate well into computer animation. They look a bit off, and not to mention the rendering on them isn't great either. Even though I like the character animation on the horses, the action is really boring. And so is most of the plot. This film has so many cliches. I don't have a problem with this movie trying to be simpler than other Dreamworks films because that's all it needed to be, but it's just so uninteresting. There is a line between charmingly simplistic and boring. This movie doesn't give us much time or reason to get interested in the main character, and a very cliche main character at that. She's an okay protagonist, I suppose, but there's just not much to note about her. They expect us to care about her 10 minutes in when really nothing interesting has happened in the movie so far. This movie has a strange problem where it feels too short and too long at the same time. It feels like every scene was twice as long, but then they went back and edited out half of each scene, and almost all the scenes are uninteresting. Like I said, they barely give us time to feel for these characters, so it's pretty hard to be interested during these slower scenes. I do like how some of the scenes were slower paced, but not all of them are great. Some of them are pretty charming though, and do make the character relationships at least a little stronger. Except for one really terrible one. This movie has an overprotective father trope, and it's just laughable. The father is not even in that many scenes, but when he is, he thinks horses are monsters or something, I don't know. Not only is it not set up that very well, it doesn't even make sense. The way they conclude that arc in the movie is just really forced and boring. Like I said, this movie has a lot of cliches, and the characters aren't strong enough to make them interesting. Some of these cliches were even used in The Mitchells vs. the Machines and Luca, except they're boring here. Going back to the story, the characters set off on this adventure to save horses halfway through the movie. I can see the potential here for some really great character building between the main girl and the horse, but she's tagged along by these two other girls who aren't really that interesting and are kind of pointless. They're not hateable, they're fine, the most they just do is just give exposition. The villain in this movie is awful. He's just bland, horse kidnapper guy, and he's not even in the movie that much. Also, his character model kinda looks like Grug. Nothing interesting about him whatsoever. Another really bad aspect of this movie is the comedy. There aren't too many jokes in this, but when it tries to be funny, the comedic timing is just embarrassing. That could also be due to this movie's pretty bad editing. The jokes themselves are just very lowbrow and sometimes annoying. There's this annoying kid and his pet donkey who are only in the movie to move the plot along like twice. But at least this movie does have a consistent tone and doesn't shove in a joke when it doesn't need to be there. Like I said, some of the slower paced scenes work until the plot moves along and you get bored again. This movie also just has really boring messages and themes that are not worth talking about. I guess I can see where they're going with the friendship angle between these girls, but again, the focus should have been on the relationship between the girl and the horse. If I do have any other positives with this movie, it'd probably be the music. Some of the songs actually do sound nice, even if they're put in scenes where they didn't really need to be there. And the score is actually pretty good too. I really liked how it sounded during the ending of the film, it was nice. But the ending of the movie itself is nothing special and it can be easily predicted. I honestly think the movie would have worked better if we didn't spend half of the movie going on that adventure. We could have more of those good character building scenes and maybe the ending would work emotionally well. I hear this movie is based on the Spirit TV show, and yeah, I think this plot would work way better as a season of a series. As is, the good parts of this movie are just interrupted because they gotta move the plot along. And most of the character arcs are boring and predictable. I can see how this movie could have turned out good, but it just isn't. Overall, I didn't really like Spirit Untamed. It's not a horrible film. I mean, some of the plot kind of works. I like the background animation, and the music is nice. However, what drags this movie down is it's just so generic, and not really in a good way. These characters aren't really interesting and their arcs aren't really looked upon that much. The comedy is unfunny, the animation looks mediocre, the pacing is all over the place, and it's just really boring. I can appreciate Dreamworks at least trying to do something different because this isn't really like a lot of their other movies, but the movie itself is still really uninteresting and I don't really recommend watching it. I'm going to give Spirit Untamed a 4 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed, comment down below, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.
Till you find where you belong.